or Committee of the Whole meeting, October 22nd, 2018. Can we have approval of the agenda?
Mr. Chair, if I may ask, there's a couple of additions to the agenda. One is from the United Way, which is a request for a donation. So you can put that under correspondence G. And then under new business, you can put B, discussion on salt truck, and C, quote for 108 Rutherford.
Council doesn't have a problem with that addition to we have approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
And I second that.
It's been approved by Councillor Knight and seconded by Councillor Lawan. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Approval of the previous minutes of October 24th, 2018.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from September 24th, 2018.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Mayor McGilvery and seconded by Councillor Campbell. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Business arising from the minutes?
Mr. Chair, the tax exemption bylaw schedule, through a lot of discussion with the town solicitor, the current bylaw that the town of Stellarton has is for a tax exemption bylaw, which would, if the applicant qualifies, meaning if they're nonprofit, they can be charged taxable rate residential as opposed to commercial. So this request came from Family Home Child Care Society in Pictou County in July, and they're requesting a partial tax exemption bylaw, which would put them from commercial to residential. I had some discussion with the town solicitor on how council would approach that, and he did recommend, or he said, perhaps given the fluctuating nature of the exemptions in the Schedule A, it might be best to simply repeal the bylaw and do the exemptions by policy. So if council wishes, we can start repealing that bylaw, and then if council chooses and they qualify, that Family Home Care Society would qualify for that partial tax exemption.
What is the will and pleasure of the council?
Just so that I understand, when we say repeal the bylaw and go to policy, a policy is less than a bylaw.
Correct, and all it would change the policy would be the Schedule A, so you could add or take off the people that are qualified under the Schedule A. You wouldn't be changing the actual bylaw for the partial tax exemption, just the Schedule A portion.
So then we will still have a bylaw, but the Schedule A will become a policy?
It would become policy to add or to take off from that schedule.
So every time that we have somebody that comes in, we will have to adjust that?
Correct.
My thoughts on this was, from the beginning, is why do we need to pick and choose which charity or non-profit organization gets that? Why don't we just exempt them all for discussion, I guess?
Yeah, one of the, I see where on here we have the Masonic Building, the Pictou County Military Rifle Association, and I'm not against that. The other one I'd like to add to it would be the Sobey Soccer Complex. I think they fall under the same thing. They're non-profit, totally non-profit, and they contribute to the community.
I believe we already refund the sports complex their full property tax, so they're essentially tax-free now.
Yes, Your Worship, I understand that, but we don't have them written in as a policy or as one of them. It's just, we've agreed to do it for so many years. What I want to do is put it in as a policy, so from here going forward, they'll be exempt. I see it like the rink, the ball field, or any other, they're providing a service for the community. That's my feeling on it anyway.
They are a nonprofit group?
Yes, they're nonprofit, yes. More so than I would say any other one, because there's just the manager and the workers are paid, and everything is comes from volunteer type thing.
Sorry.
If I may recommend that, because there are so many and there's certain criteria involved, that I think I would recommend to council that you would do it as the requests come in.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I will go with that recommendation.
Or, Sue, we can't make motions here.
No, what you will do is just recommend to council to go further.
Okay, just to clarify, so somebody from the association, Sobeys Soccer Association would have to make an appeal? Okay, good, thank you. I'll talk to them.
So at this point, we have a general consensus that Susan's recommendation go forward to our next council meeting.
Now I will second, Your Worship.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Knight and seconded by Councillor Lawan. All those in favor? Motion carried. Our next is a parking spot for the fire department. That's in the large parking lot, is it not, Susan?
Correct. This was brought up at the last committee of the whole, and there was going to be some investigation, and just not sure if Blaine wants to report on what was suggested.
I think we already got an explanation in an email, so it's the will and pleasure of the council on this issue.
Can I ask how many spots you're looking for and what locations? Maybe the chief can help us out there. How many spots are required and where do you want them?
Worship councillors, I didn't even know this was coming up for discussion. I had no idea about this. We had spots in the back of the fire hall that you can put 5 or 6 vehicles back there. To block off parking lots out there, and you get people playing hockey and bingo, they're going to be parking in them spots. You can't keep people out of the spots. So I don't know how you're going to block them off for the fire department. And like I say, there's 5 or 6 spots out back. And I even put signs on our own door to keep them stopped and parked in front of our doors. And the firemen still do that. So there's no, if you cut off parking spots out there, they're not going to pay attention to it. And the public's not going to pay attention to it.
I don't know when this became an issue. That's my question.
Mr. Chair, this was brought to me by some members from the fire department. My apology that I didn't talk to Dwight first. But the suggestion was valid for the back of the fire department. I took a picture the other day and sent it to Blaine. Blaine has had some reservation on it. Maybe he can talk to it. But if we move the GFL dump closer to the road, there's plenty of spots there for parking. But Blaine, if Blaine wants to talk to it right quick.
I'm sorry, the only suggestion I would make in future, if there's anything coming from the fire department, is you come through the chief, because he's kind of blindsided here. He didn't know what was going on. And any other, I know it's not on you. The men that came to you should have went to the chief first and heading them to you.
And when we looked around the back, and if you move the dumpster And if church is going in on Sunday morning, the firemen can't park back there because people going to church, they'll grab them spots just as fast as they can get them. They put 2 or 3 cars in there because the church was looking for a couple of parking spots before, because me and the town engineer went in and looked at it for the church, and we didn't think it was allowable. There's enough room in there to put parking spots in there with the propane tank and the generator there. We're scared to death somebody's going to run into that stuff. So they're taking their own risk parking in there on their own, and they damage the town property. It's going to cost a lot of money.
Blaine, do you want to get in on this discussion?
Yes, I don't have the exact information on me because I wasn't aware this was a topic tonight, but basically we measured the distances back there. It doesn't have the recommended space for parking stall length and lane width, and it's not recommended that we put parking spaces back there from an engineering point of view.
So what is the will and pleasure of the council?
Well, Mr. Chair, I would go with the chief. If the chief feels it's necessary, I would certainly go with his recommendation, but he doesn't seem to feel it's necessary.
I think the chief does indicate he'd like to have the dumpster moved. Would that make a difference?
No, if you move the dumpster, and there's spots in there that firemen get to pull in there at times. But I'm saying if the church is in there first, they're going to grab them spots. But you can't measure off and put parking spots there because there's not enough room. But if they sneak in there, they get in there. Firemen are going to have to park wherever they can park as soon as you get there. That's all we can do about it, because you're not going to be able to block off spots in that parking lot out there for firemen only, because people will take the spots.
Would suggest that we leave it the way it is, and if it becomes a problem, we'll look at it again.
I agree with that recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Correspondence, Susan?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first thing is just for information for council's consideration, just that the funding, as the mayor had reported in his report at council last week, that the province has approved funding towards the cooperation between the towns of Trenton and New Glasgow for a transit study to the amount of $37,250. And that's just for council's information. The next thing, I'm not sure if there's any questions on that. The next thing is just again, the report for the Nova Scotia Office of the Ombudsman annual report is in the office for those who are interested in seeing that, and we can make that available. The Heritage Gas Economic and Environmental Benefits in Nova Scotia report, again, it's just there for information. There's a thank you note to Mayor, Council, and staff from the family of of late Isabel Stewart, who recently passed away. She was the mother of an employee. The next thing is from Michelle Ferris from the Aberdeen Health Foundation, just basically introducing herself and what they do. And the next thing is from the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, their September board report. And so those from A to F are for council, for information purposes.
Said there was a letter there from the United Way.
Yes. For council's consideration. Also to note, Mr. Chair, the United Way has asked that the town of Stellarton, if they're interested in payroll deductions, so that has been, that'll be in place of the pay stubs for the employees, should they choose to do that.
So, Sue, this here is just for information purposes this evening.
From A to F on your agenda is for information, and G, if that's a request for donation, if you choose to donate. If not, you can also receive that for information.
We don't have a budget for the United Way. Previous years, we've never. Do we have anything left in the annual grants?
Yes, there is some in the annual grants, and to note as well, you certainly don't have to donate the actual request. You can donate what council wishes to.
That's something, it'd be like a $100 donation or something in the annual grants.
Are you making that a motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion we donate $100 to the United Way of Pictou County.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved by Mayor McGilvery and seconded by Councillor Knight. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And Mr. Chair, if I can get a motion for moving those A to F for information purposes as well.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Danny McGilvery, seconded by Councillor Brian Knight. All those in favor? Against? Motion carried. Next item is terms of office for 2019. Mayor McGilvery, would you like to speak on this issue?
I don't have the sheet in front of me. I know there are going to be some changes to the committee structure this year coming up. There was none last year. One that I'm willing to take on that I haven't in the past is the economic development, or the REN. That would allow, if that's okay with Councillor Lawan.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
I think another suggested change from one of the councillors is to have the homecoming committee become part of recreation committee. Is council okay with that?
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Other than that, I'm okay to stay on everything that I'm on. I'm wondering if there's anything else that people would like to change or switch. Or...
With the Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with the homecoming committee becoming part of the recreation committee, and me not being on the recreation committee, does that mean that I am off that committee now?
I would say yes.
Thank you very much.
Is everyone okay with the remaining ones, or?
I wouldn't mind going on the police one if Simon is.
Okay with that as well.
So, Councillor Lamont, you're stepping off the police, are you? Okay.
So is everybody else happy with the committees they are on?
We'll do a list, but I'd also like to, I've asked him, so I know he's going to say yes, welcome Councillor Knight as our new deputy mayor for our next meeting.
I would move.
And I'll second.
And moved by Councillor Lawan and seconded by Mayor McGilvery. All those in favor? Against? Motion carried.
We should thank Deputy Mayor Pence for putting his ear in.
Definitely. Thank you.
I would like to take the time to thank Council for their decorum and respect for each other in the council chamber for the year that I had in this chair. Thank you. All right, next item is salt truck. Sue?
I have correspondence here from the engineer who's here to discuss the issue with the salt truck.
So as you know, we're down a salt truck this year. There's two options. One, we can rent a piece of equipment for the entire winter. We've looked at possibly a loader with a wing. We would have to salt the streets behind it because it doesn't have salting capabilities. However, it would be quite maneuverable for especially like the middle part of the town. The other option, I've got a quote from Nova Truck Centers for a pre-made truck that's sitting on the lot out in Westville. It's approximately $144,000 plus tax. And I got a quote from the body supplier manufacturer, La Rochelle, for $119,000 approximately. So that would be totaling about $270,000, about $15,000 higher than the price of our truck for last year. If we can get this truck to them, meaning the body manufacturers by November 1st, we can have the salt truck, the body built and back here for late January. We have to go for tender for a salt truck anyway, and what I understand is that trying to go for tender for a truck chassis with the metal tariffs and everything that's going on in the United States is going to delay the process for next year. So at the very minimum, we would have to go over tender on the salt truck prior to the 2019 budget. I'm just wanting to know what council's wanting to do here.
Sorry.
The only question I have is the legality of it. Can we buy it without tender? I know it's sitting there in a lot. We can have it. If we go to tender, it's probably winter will be over by the time we get the truck. So can we do it without going to tender?
We're looking into procurement policy right now. We'll hope to have an answer very shortly.
So sorry, Councillor Lowan. I'm given to understand that these things can be grabbed up pretty fast if we don't get it. It can be gone off the lot. So it's first come first served type of base, and they only have one on the lot. It's not something that's a common item. Am I correct?
I believe there is two. They quote us on two different chassis.
So just so I understand this, if we agree to buy the truck now, we will not have to rent a salt truck. Is that correct?
We would have to rent a piece of equipment or have a contractor come in on any major snow events in the month of January. Still.
But that's not going to amount to is that $40,000 that's in here? Something else? Okay. So then how much approximately would be the cost for that salting, I guess? Or
Yeah, a loader with a wing. It's hard to rent a salt truck. So we were looking at renting a loader with a wing on it. And it's approximately $5,000 a month to rent.
I think in order to save some of those rental fees, we're going to have to buy it sooner or later anyway. I think we might as well buy it sooner, especially if it's out there on the lot and we can get it delivered this winter. I think that's probably the way to go from my point of view.
Yeah, I agree with you, Your Worship. Just to be clear, if we buy this truck, it's going to do the full job, salting and plowing, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it meets our specific. I've been looking at specifications on the body and the truck. and it'll have everything.
Okay, and to answer Councillor Wan's question, what you're saying is we're going to have to rent would be up until that truck comes. Is this what you're saying?
Correct. We could either rent a piece of machinery for the entire month of January, or we could call a contractor on an as-needed basis.
What year is this truck?
This is a brand new truck. Yep, 2018 or 19, I can't.
You making a motion on that, Your Worship?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we follow the engineer's recommendation and purchase the truck.
I'll second that recommendation.
On that question, Susan, it still has to be checked out procurement-wise.
That's correct, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Basically, pending procurement policy approval and financing approval.
Mayor McGilvery, you make that part of the motion too?
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
Moved by Mayor McGilvery, seconded by Councillor Knight. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, what I passed out to council there was an RFP regarding the building addition for Public Works. So Blaine will speak to that as well.
So I'm looking for approval to approve the proposal from S&C Lavalin for the design of the Town Works building addition for $40,812.35, including HST.
Is that not in our budget, or was there 25, was it?
This would be the low bid out of the 3 proposals that were submitted.
This is what doesn't make sense to me, Mr. Deputy Mayor and Council as well, because one of the bids was $154,000 just to do a study. It's just absolutely ridiculous for a study to cost $154,000 for a small addition to the town barn. I don't understand it.
I have to agree with Councillor Lawan. This is far-fetched.
The 2 low tenders were reviewed. We reviewed their approach, the amount of hours required to do the project by each firm. They were very similar, the 2 low bids. And it's not for a study, it's for the design of electrical, mechanical, structural details to put a 24 addition onto the building, 24-foot addition onto the building, as well as upgrades to and renovations to the existing.
Couldn't one of the contractors come in and tell you what you need rather than us paying?
You need, to get your building permit, you need engineer drawings for your building permit.
Boy, the old world is changing.
Understood, but the question that I still have is, in any other, can't we get a all-encompassing quote on the 24 feet addition? And we're talking about 24 feet. When we are paying $40,000 just for this design, and we are only adding 24 feet, it's, and I understand I'm not picking on you, Blaine, please don't understand that, but it's just frustrating to pay that much money. I'm still very unsure about this, but that is the only way, unless somebody else can tell me otherwise.
I understand council's reluctance here, but being from an engineering consulting background, this is the typical way of doing buildings. It's commonplace. It's a bid design process versus a bid a design. There's 2 different processes. You can do a bid design, build design process, or a bid and design and then build process, right? There's 2 different approaches. There's advantages and disadvantages both ways. Mostly time frame the difference here, if you go the design approach, you're only committed to the design of the building. You're not committed to the building of the project. So instead of committing to $500,000 or whatever the price may be to build the barn or the addition, you're only committed to the $40,000 to design it.
Clear as mud to me, son. Clear as mud.
The other question that I have is, does it make a difference if the project is a standalone project or is it different when it's attached to a building? Is there any difference in the price, in your opinion?
That's a debate that the people can argue. Like I said, there is advantages and disadvantages. One of the design build process saves time. In our case, we have the time to go out and do the design of it first, and then come in and put out an open tender for the contractor. But like I said, the advantage to having the design done first is that you can only have to commit to the design of the building.
I think at this point with this discussion, we can give our different views, but at the end of the day, it's needed. So what's the will and pleasure of the council?
Yes, Mr. Chair. If you were to go and build a house, you would go and buy blueprints. The unfortunate thing here is it's not an off-the-shelf type of thing. So it has to be designed specifically for our needs. And, of course, it's a big project. So as I understand, it's going to be all incomplete. Everything's going to be involved. Your plumbing, your heating, your electrical, your concrete work, your walls, everything is going to be engineered, designed. I personally, I know I don't like spending the money, but if we're going to get this, we get it done, we have to spend it. So, and I agree that we should get a design down the road. We can go for bids. If we go in after a contractor and we're on the hook for $500,000, it's better just to have the design, even if we do it in phases. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and hire the contractor at the lowest bid.
The only thing that I was thinking of, Councillor Knight, is if we were able to get a design for a standalone building, and in the future we decide that we're going to relocate our town works place, I guess, or barn, or whatever you want to call it, then we will not need another study or a design plan for it. But because this is an attached structure, then that design will be specific for that attached structure. And what I'm talking about, I guess, is a possibility that could arise from the reclamation of the land in the mine. So that's what I'm trying to think about. The future is how can we maybe shoot two birds in one stone, and instead of doing a design that could be obsolete in 3 years' time, that we might be able to take advantage of it because we're going to pay a lot of money for it.
Oh, it's a good point. I agree with you. And I don't know if when they talk to the consultant, if you could ask them if that's a possibility. I mean, would they be able to tell you it's an addition of another wall is what they'd be looking at. And if they were to destroy the building, or if we were to sell the building, well, anyway, that would be something the engineer would have to look at. I'm not an engineer.
I'll second the motion of Councillor Knight and continue the discussion. It is the lowest bid. I think it is something that we have to do. I don't know if the town barns will be moved in the next little while or not, but it is a consideration. But I think at this time it's the best to take the low bid.
Been moved by Councillor Knight and seconded by Mayor McGilvery. All those in favor? Against? Motion carried. (108) Rutherford Street. Sue?
Okay, so this was passed around via email on Friday, so we just need to get council's recommendation to move forward with this quote, which I have here for you. So in speaking with the town planner, Rachel McLean, she spoke with Gunner's Mobile Wash regarding this demolition. So basically, they're just going to be taking down the section of 108 Rutherford that is hanging. Yeah, it's not to demolish the whole side.
Get rid of the oil tank and the dryer.
Will this scope of work be somewhat satisfactory to the residents who live in the area? Do you think it'll be $7,000 like well spent from their point of view?
Well, Mayor McGilvery, in my opinion, anything would be an improvement to what they're looking at right at the moment.
I just have a question. So what are we going to do in the future if someone else comes along and says they want the same thing done?
Well, we'll have to look at it when it comes, Sue.
Just curious.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to go ahead and tear it down. First, the other thing I want to say is Deputy Mayor Pence has been chasing this now for a year and pursuing it to try to have it resolved. I think he'd probably be happy at this point to see some kind of closure coming to it.
The disappointment I have is that we can't take the whole structure down. We'll work at it the best we can with what we got.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved by Councillor Knight, and seconded by Mayor Danny McGilvery. All those in favor? Against? Motion carried. Number 7, fire prevention bylaw for consideration.
Mr. Chair, I got a few phone calls over the weekend. People were quite upset, and of course the usual rumor mill started, and everything was all twisted and turned around. There's too many Susans in our operation here. But anyway, I looked at the bylaw, and I understand where the chief is coming from. There's only one issue I have with it, and that's the SA approved. There are some people out there, and one individual called me, spent a lot of money on a fire pit. I'd like to go back and probably look at that. I don't want to kill the bill because I think it's a good one, or kill the bylaw. I think it's a good one. The only other thing I would add to it, I would say, for example, there should be a charged hose or a garden hose whenever they're used. There'll be other things I'd like to revisit it, and maybe the chief can give me his views on it. Anyway, I got a few phone calls from people the weekend.
When I put this out there, I gave it to Susan. We were trying to work with something to come up with something for the town of Stellarton. CSA approved, yes. Anything that's to be stuff added to this, and the councils will get to read it all before it ever approved. Anybody with a, say, a 45-gallon drum with a grate on it, or people that built places from Hawker Siddeley with grates on, that's not a problem. The problem is people that are burning couches, chairs, everything, and especially if there's a fire ban burn on. We had a call in the summer this year that there was a fire ban burn on, and we got called twice, same place. And fight with them, trying to put it out, and then we have to get the police in there and get involved in it too. But once we get a draft done up, then the draft will be done, and then it'll go to council, and then you can sit down and talk about it. But there will be stuff added to this. I haven't jumped on 3 days over this, and I don't know how it got out because it was supposed to be till it was brought up to council. But this is what we're just working on it, and that's what we're trying to do, come up with a ban for the town of Stellarton.
Because I have no problem with that. I'll make a motion. We go forward to looking at it, and I'm going to bring up an old bylaw. It's the same as the dog bylaw. We had a fight. So sorry, Susan. We will go forward and look into it. Like you said, that was some of the, I'm sorry, that was some of the concerns, was the fact that some people said, I have a barrel in my backyard and I have a hose whenever I have a fire and I put it out, and there was other individuals that have it. So I can live with going forward. We do need a bylaw, I agree with you. And I'll make a motion, we go ahead and with it, or with looking at it anyway.
At this point, I don't know if council will agree or not, but I would like to see Councillor Knight, Mayor Danny McGilvery, and our chief sit down, take that bylaw that was presented, and mold it for the town of Stellarton. Is everybody in agreement with that?
I would include the town clerk on any of that stuff.
Well, I thought she was going to be there anyways. She's the coach.
And just for clarification, so the fire chief came to me, and this was just a drafted bylaw that was taken from a neighboring town just to kind of as a working document to start. This was by no means presented to be passed. This is just a working document that, again, like you say, Deputy Mayor, that will be molded for the town of Stellarton. This is just the beginning.
Do I have council's consensus on the recommendation that I just made?
We can leave it with staff for now, and then they can get back to us next committee of the whole, maybe?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Sue. HR policy 056.
Mr. Chair, these policies contain salary information, so I recommend that we move this to in-camera session.
Thank you, Mayor McGilvery.
I'll second that.
Moved by Mayor McGilvery, seconded by Councillor Campbell. All those in favor?
On the question, Mr. Chair, the policy was approved in open council, and our salaries for staff is published online. So I'm not 100% sure this would fall under a in-camera. So just my thoughts.
There will be personnel issues discussed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there anybody like to speak at the open forum? Dwight? Blaine? Oh, you're all good? Wow. All right, we'll note that and make sure it's in the minutes, Sue. I guess our next meeting is November 26th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m.
And I move that we adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Been moved by Mayor McGilvery that we adjourn.